seconds and then it comes back on.
They take a picture every 30 minutes, so you'll see, because we want to do a collage at the time we're done.
Yeah, be
So
like
it's a
time lapse
Yeah.
photography.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That would
Pretty
be
crazy.
awesome.
It would be.
Wow.
You're on.
We're on. Okay. All right, good morning and welcome to SAC.TV's new program, In Between the Lines. And today we have special guest David Buicko, and we're going to have Joe, one of our board members, chip in. We're usually talking about what's in the newspapers, in the local paper, making some comment on that and some things that are related. But of course, in this particular case, we'll only speak on issues that you're familiar with because you're not involved in every project.
Thank God.
Yes. And you know,
We got a stack of papers there for me. We
Well-
won't get done for 2 hours.
some of them are from last week. It's a half an hour show. We're already about 5 minutes into it. And so the idea is, one of the things you mentioned before the show, before we came on, the rebirth of the Electric City, which is a very interesting piece that I was just flipping through, showing a lot of the before and after projects. So this is going back to the beginning of like 15 years now, right?
Yeah, give or take from about 2002 on.
Yeah.
And actually really tied in with the, a lot of the projects came in when Metroplex, Ray Gillen came on board, and we ended up attacking some of the dormant properties and rundown properties in downtown.
Now your position is COO or CEO of Gillespie Group? Is that right?
Of whatever I want to be. No, I'm Chief Operating Officer. I've been with the Gillespie Group now 33 years.
Wow.
So I'm Chief Operating Officer at Gillespie Group, President of Gillespie Management. I got my roots right here, 2 blocks up on the corner of J and Union Street back in 1975 with Marvin and Company, when actually Schenectady was still booming on the GE days.
Okay. That was an accounting business.
Yeah, I was a CPA.
Oh, okay. Still are probably in a way.
Well, I think you got to take some courses after that, but actually the background being a CPA helps you in real estate development because in essence it's all about numbers.
Well, that's true. And maybe you can help us figure out some numbers today while we're going through it. Nothing too technical. One of the things we try to do with Between the Lines is when we go out to the public, part of our charter as a nonprofit organization, and Schenectady Access Cable Council is a 501c3, is to help with the education of the public, to bring them up to speed on some of the issues that are out there that might be otherwise a little more complicated. So we try to get people to come in who are familiar with some of these different subjects, especially like you have all this knowledge and background of the transition of the downtown and so forth. And what does it mean and how does it work? You know, kind of what's the future look like? We all know what the past looks like. So we gotta
some of it was awesome, and then all of a sudden we bottomed out back in the 90s and early 2000s. So it's a nice bounce back, and it's not just about doing one project. It's about a variety of people doing projects and a variety of people investing. And it's just not downtown too. It's dealing with some of the underbelly of the community, and one of the projects that we were pretty excited about is actually the old mica manufacturing that we actually took about 4 different locations from social services. It was similar to a project we did in Charleston, West Virginia, and we consolidated all the social service functions into one. So it's OneStop Shopping. And if you guys remember Schenectady, there was a social service function up across from Union College on Knott. Then there was one on Knott Terrace. There was one at Center City. There was one on Erie Boulevard. And it was very difficult for people availing themselves of whether it's child protective, welfare, unemployment, job training, etc. They'd have to go to different buildings, and sometimes they went to the wrong building.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, mass transit wasn't too good, so they ended up taking a cab and having to go to the wrong place. So we put everything all in one. We put it on a bus route. We work with CDTA so that you end up with one-stop shopping, and it really, and particularly as the economy bottomed out, the recession back in the 10, 15 years ago, you had a lot of people using social services, but it was consolidated all in one modern building.
The building, is that the one on Broadway?
Yeah, 797 Broadway.
Okay.
And actually part of that too, we worked with FEMA and the county and the city to fix the hill behind it. We spent over $2 million fixing the hill because if you remember, everybody the old timers like me remember the Tell Oil disaster, where actually the hill came down on that gas station down
Yeah,
on the
I
other
remember
side.
that. Yeah.
Okay, we had the same geological conditions there, so we ended up having to work with FEMA, working with Metroplex, county and city to fix that hill. So you can see it's all stabilized right now, and actually the houses up on top actually have spectacular views. And then the second part of that project was actually one that they're celebrating the 1 year anniversary today, I believe. Actually, they're having a function, which is the building behind it, 845 Broadway, which we moved 154 residents from the old YMCA on Lower State Street. They were living in 90 square feet, multi-story, no air conditioning, no elevator, communal bathrooms, into efficiency apartments of 400 square feet with modern services.
Is that the same amount of apartments?
A little bit less. I think they were about square footage more, but less. I think they were about 100.
I usually tell everyone to shut their phone off, and me, I forgot.
Mine is off. So it's 154 units, right? I think they were about 170 plus or minus over there. But when you walk through it and you see the living conditions that people are in right now, these are people that are trying to get back on their feet, and that's probably I don't think we made any money on that project, but I think we broke even at best. But it was one where we worked with the state Department of DHCR, Housing and Community Renewal, the feds with tax credits, the city, and it worked out very well. So if you drive by it, you had two old buildings, and the pictures are in there, how it looked before with broken windows, etc. So you ended up doing that. And then we moved the balance of the YMCA previously to Center City. So you had a new modern YMCA that went from 1,000 members to over 5,000 members.
Now,
So-
one of the things that a lot of people wouldn't be aware of the fact that you were even involved in that project, meaning Galisi Group. From the point of view, it looked like a county project. It looked like social services, state of New York, Division of Housing, Community Renewal, and what have you like that. So what part does Galisi actually play in a project like that?
Well, we owned 797 Broadway. We owned both buildings. So actually, we worked with the county. The county put an RFP out a while ago, probably 7-8 years ago or more. And we gave them a plan on consolidation. So we own it and lease it to the county.
Oh, okay.
So that building's ours. On the 845 Broadway with the YMCA, we own the building. Tried to figure out what to do with it, because you have a limited amount of parking if you look at the hill there. You have National Grid across from there. So they've got David Brown, who's the president of the YMCA, myself, Lou Magliotto, who ran the housing program for them.
We know Lou.
Lou is absolutely awesome. When we got the award from DHCR,
Yeah.
Lou broke down and cried and hugged
Is
me.
that right?
So he's so happy for his guys that are there. I mean, Lou is probably one of the most unsung heroes in the capital region in terms of what he does for a needy population. So actually, we put the deal together. Actually, Metroplex ended up buying the old YMCA, and actually, I think they're doing seniors housing there with another developer right now. Dave Brown committed to move the YMCA to downtown. It was a very leap of faith on his part, because all the rest of the Ys were suburban Ys, etc. And then there was a school of thought to move it where Golub is now. So that was actually one of the initial thoughts of where we were going to put the Y. So it's a collaboration. You brainstorm and say what's good for people. And all of a sudden now take a look in Center City, which is right down the street. You've got a full service Y that's as nice as any gym out there. People can go to work out early in the morning, 6 o'clock, shower. They've got basketball courts, volleyball, steam rooms, sauna. The Y keeps it fantastic, and then you can go to work. Once you're and the whole environment is changing throughout the country. We're in the capital region sometimes a little bit behind in terms of some of the trends, but people are going to urban living now.
Okay.
And if you've got, think about it, you're working at Quirky. You can go to the Y, work out, go to work. You want to go out to dinner, you want to go for a drink, you want to go to the movies, you want to go to Proctor's. You don't have to get back in your car. Everything is right there.
Yeah.
You know, you speak of Quirky and the other new businesses that are coming to Schenectady. It's one of the advantages, I think, has been ingenious. What you've done, what Metroplex has done with Mr. Gillen, is bringing business to Schenectady. We depended on GE for years and years, Electric City. They've downgraded so much. You know, this makes it possible to bring more business to the city. I think it's very good.
You're right, but it's an interesting one, Joe. Actually, GE was the reason Quirky came.
Okay.
GE is a large investor in Quirky.
All right.
And actually, when we brought it, they were looking at Burlington, Vermont to move their operations, the secondary operations from New York City, and brought Ben Kaufman, their chairman, in. He met with the mayor, he met with Ray Gillen. And that's one of the things, these guys, and I know this is not a political show, which I'll keep it that way, but the fact is that when you need something done, you can pick up the leaders to be and say, we got to sell our city, whether it's getting Ray there. Actually, Ray, his mother died that weekend. The wake was over, and he came back in and met with Quirky. The mayor came in from wherever he was and met with Quirky. And guess what? We did that deal in a matter of after our night. They came in, it was 10 below zero. They walked across, and actually a funny story that was published. We're walking with Ben Kaufman. We had dinner at Johnny's, then walked across the street to show them Proctor's and the GE Theater, which they liked. A girl from Union College walked by and pointed and said, "You're Ben." And I'm saying, "Holy cow!" And she applied for an internship a while ago for Quirky, and she recognized this guy who was bundled up in a coat, and he was so flabbergasted that they went online. They checked out. These guys are all faster than I am on their handhelds, but they got a resume up. They gave her a job offer that next day.
Oh, very good.
So it shows you. But he really, the point I was making is he liked the Thomas Edison, the birthplace of GE here. When you go up to Quirky's space up on the 4th floor, you end up seeing, actually the 5th floor, you end up seeing the GE sign, the GE logo. And he said, this is where we got to be. So, you know, using our history to an advantage and selling people to come here. And actually, they're well over 150 people now working downtown, and from what they tell me, 60% of the people live downtown or live within walking distance, whether it's a stockade, whether it's in the apartments. These younger tech kids, they work their tails off, but they also like a nice quality of life, and they don't want to get in their car and go to the suburbs.
Well, you know, we interview some of the people from the different neighborhoods, and a lot of times the people in the neighborhoods and in local neighborhood associations don't feel like any of this economic development and downtown prosperity and so forth is affecting them in terms of, we have a woman here who does a show from, I think, Hamilton Hill or Mount Pleasant, and she feels like, she talks like this is not made positive changes in their neck of the woods, so to speak. And we hear that from all the communities as well. At SAC, we've worked with over 100 different organization representatives in this last year doing shows. Everything from Inner City Mission, SICM, to Boys and Girls Club, whatever. We've done shows with all of them. And so we get a feedback actually from the outlying areas, from a lot of people, what's going on in your neighborhood. And the impression of what's happening to people in the neighborhood seems to be overwhelmingly that there's two cities, really. There's downtown prosperity, and then there's what's going on in the rest of the city. And that's the kind of feedback we get. And to give you an example of that, on the last show, and we asked the same question of the guests that we've had on previous shows, they're talking about foreclosure rates went up 358% in the city over last year. 358% sounds like a big jump, but it was already rather high. And I'm not saying that it's unique to Schenectady, but they're feeling it out there in a different way. They see the prosperity downtown and they see the improvements of downtown, but they don't see that it's doing anything in the outlying areas. And so, and we hear that a lot. We hear that from pretty much almost every organization comes in, and there's some portion of that, whether it's the school district, Larry Spring was here, we did a show with him, or whether it's the communities and the outlying areas. So we look at it and try to say, okay, there obviously is a difference in perception.
And I respectfully disagree with you, by the way.
Okay.
First of all, what would Schenectady be if they didn't develop the tax base on downtown? The neighborhoods would actually be in worse shape because of the additional taxes. If you look just on our properties alone, we've on properties that were tax exempt. And that's if you looked at the properties that we took over, whether it was BN Plaza or Alco or Center City, was paying $50,000 now instead of $300,000, or MVP that's now paying $650,000 in taxes. We've created over $2 million of additional revenue per annum on properties that we're not paying taxes. So where would the city be without it? I agree, I'm from Rome, New York. Guess what? Every neighborhood in upstate New York, every city in upstate New York has urban issues and urban challenges in terms of residential. But the fact is, if you can give people a little bit more to be proud of, you're going to get people at least looking. People are starting to look. Take a look at this homes project coming out Sunday. People are coming in and actually looking at homes. Now you got to bifurcate the foreclosures too, because you got a lot of absentee landlords, and that was a big problem that a lot of upstate New York people have. People buy them, they're buying, they don't put any money in houses, and then they walk away. And you got a landlord, a tenant in there that is not getting any services from a landlord that's out of town and all that. So, you know, some of the foreclosures, it's a culling. I'm happy that they're foreclosing on certain landlords that are not taking care of their property and just giving them back to the banks. So eventually it'll turn it around. There's going to be we're looking at programs right now in terms of some of the neighborhoods to try and help. But I think rising water helps everybody. It's not going to, if you attack the neighborhoods without having services down here, guess what? You're not going to be successful. So you have to make a strong muscle. We made a strong core. I think there was a plan way back that got scrapped that spent $100 million or $500,000 called the Hunter Plan that I read that I threw out because it suggested economic development that didn't work in downtown Schenectady. It was done in 2000. And it wanted to develop outposts and having the middle fill in. I think having the middle fill in, and take a look at right next to Villa Italia, you got some more new apartments there. So that's starting to go down towards Mount Pleasant area. Take a look at those two buildings we just talked about for the YMCA and social services. Well, guess what? They were run down, vacant buildings with pigeons living in them for how many years? That's on its way to Mount Pleasant.
Own a building like that.
Yeah. Well, there's still a lot of them. I took a tour last week of Amsterdam. They used to be one of the most prosperous cities in the Northeast way back in its heyday, and now they've got all these old factories that are closed or run down, and what do you do with them? They're tough. So we're taking it a step at a time. The neighborhoods have to be focused on, I think, getting that HUD grant that Senator Schumer got with the mayor and getting $3 million. You got some homes have to be demolished, and they're demolishing them because guess what? They're never. If you know anything about real estate, certain things are cheaper to tear down than to rehab, particularly if they're full of asbestos or full of mold or just structurally unsafe. So it's a way that you really have to deal with the neighborhoods one by one, whether it's starting to work out Eastern, maybe starting to work up towards Jay and Barrett. You got to start doing.
So is there a plan of long-term strategy that would affect? For example, the State Board of Equalization Assessment says that Schenectady is now at 1.21% and that it's lost 20% overall property values in the last 5 years. I mean, then to the homeowners or to the average people, which is like the old guard of people that live in and around Schenectady, this is like, it doesn't seem to be having the effect of either lowering or stabilizing the taxes or stabilizing the property values for the rest of the people.
Well, the taxes, I believe, at least based on what I see, are stabilized, and the city's finances are a lot better than they were when they had to plug gaps in selling the tax liens to American tax funding, for instance. I mean, that was a put your finger in the dike.
Yeah. Well, they kept the finger in the dike for a few years too long.
Again, that gets into political stuff. I'm a real estate developer. We're proud of what's going on here. We've adopted Schenectady. I think the neighborhoods are going to evolve. I mean, you nailed a good point. Larry Spring, who's a terrific superintendent in my mind, there's a $62 million gap in what the Schenectady School District should be funded pursuant to the state formula.
Yeah.
Okay, do the math on that one. That reduces your property taxes 20%. He's fighting for it. Is he going to get it? Who knows? I sure hope he gets a portion of it because, I mean, there's a court case that dictates how much Schenectady should be getting for school support from the state. $62 million. If we got 80% of that, that's $45 million or whatever the math is on that thing. That's a huge number. So that you really have to bifurcate property taxes, and if you look at neighborhoods between city and county and school. The school's the biggest portion of it. And we do have a high poverty rate. A lot of urban areas do. You're not going to change. I mean, urban areas, whether it's Albany, Troy, even Saratoga, Utica, Rome, Rochester, Syracuse, we all have urban challenges because services are here. You've got a higher poverty level here. Take a look at how many kids at the school district qualify for free lunch. They're getting all of them right now. I mean, everybody is getting a free lunch.
Pretty much all of them at the moment.
And it's one that, I mean, I'm looking at it, and why was I happy doing some of the things we're doing, including getting the revenue stream from the casino tax, is because we can make a difference in kids' lives and get them out of the poverty a little bit in terms of getting money into our school district. One of the saddest stories I had was I was having a cup of coffee with Larry Spring at Philadelphia last winter or the winter before, and he had to cancel school. He said it's the toughest decision he had to make. I said, tough, canceling school on a Friday. Okay, gives people a 3-day weekend. You know why it was tough? You know the answer.
The kids wouldn't probably get anything to eat that day.
Bingo. Or the weekend, because they send a significant amount of children home with food from the school. Mm-hmm. So these kids, think about it, this is New York, this is United States, this is Schenectady, and we're not different than a lot of communities, but think about these kids that aren't going to be fed because they don't have school on Friday. That's embarrassing. Mm-hmm. No kid should be hungry. And how do you study if you're hungry? I mean, it's I can live off the land for a while, but these kids really, it's a shame. And if we can do a little bit to help them, you're absolutely right. We've got to do neighborhoods, but if you can, neighborhoods. If you attack the neighborhoods first, you're not going to raise taxes. We can't raise taxes anymore on them. So therefore, how are you going to solve the problem? You got to get a stabilized tax base. So if you're stabilizing some of your commercial property doesn't put any more kids in the school that's taxed already. We've got a minority as majority in our school district. Mm-hmm. We've got a lot of people that came up and different nationalities that came up to have a better life here, and some of them are doing things in the neighborhood and upgrading their homes, etc. So if we can start getting that revenue stream in place, getting our if your borrowing rate gets a little better, you pick up 0.5 point on your bonds. There's all these things that can help out, but attacking the neighborhood, and I'm a real estate developer, but attacking the neighborhoods first will never work because you can't create tax base. And where do you get the money to attack neighborhoods? Because if you don't have people that want to have the ability to go to a show, or and you're right, a lot of the people in the poor neighborhoods don't have the ability to come and see a show at the movie theater. But guess what? I mean, you find a lot of them come now. We got a movie theater downtown. They could walk. They can take mass transportation. Why don't the suburbs have some of the challenges of cities? Because of services, and because you're not going to find people having to go to the city mission. Okay. I mean, my favorite program with the city mission is the ambassadors program. I think that's so awesome. I was actually a volunteer ambassador. Mike Sakoshi, who runs that.
Those are the ones with the red coats.
Yeah, and they're people that are homeless, and all of a sudden the proctors administers it, and they've got self-dignity now, and we can get people back up. And who else can deal with homeless better than people who are homeless?
Yeah.
And actually now they have a card, which they gave out, and on the card they publish when the city mission gives meals. So if I'm walking by and somebody wants to hit me up for money, rather than me deciding whether that person is trying to just make money on the thing, I said, here's a card. Go eat at the city mission. You won't go hungry. Nobody will go hungry in the city. So those are all the things that if we figure out how to do it. Now, on the side note, like we're doing this casino project, and we're looking at the financing, and I brought in bankers from San Francisco, LA, Chicago, Boston, to look at Schenectady and to look at financing. They were from Bank of America, Citicorp, Wells Fargo, KeyBank, et cetera. And it was like Groundhog Day because we gave the same tour and same presentation about the cap.
Over and over again.
Yeah, so it was like I got bored with myself.
Yeah.
But what happened was a lot of them aren't even familiar with upstate New York and some of the good things, whether it's Global Foundries, College of Nanoscale Science, GE. GE's bringing people back here. They moved World Energy headquarters out of Atlanta to back here to Schenectady.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. In order to focus back in on the local scene, because kind of we involve all the organizations and what have you in and around Schenectady, We try to make a little sense out of what's happening, so we bring people in who know, like we've learned a lot from what you've said so far. And we don't have an opinion, so to speak, one way or the other. We just want people to come in and explain the position or explain sometimes complicated things. I would not have known some of the projects that Galisi was involved in, that they had anything to do with those projects, because they look like a county project or what have you. So that's obviously really a good thing. The difficulty that we're having here, as we mentioned, they have a different perception from out in the communities than they do for, like, say, downtown business district and so on like that. And the difficulties that we have with things like that is that people don't really understand these complicated projects and how they're put together, and they're beginning to realize that they need to pay attention, because it does make a difference to their tax base and to the other issues and the other things that are going on. So we're getting a lot more intelligent questions of people coming in and
Which
saying,
is terrific.
how does this work, or why does this work? And we don't want to say what's opinionized, what's fair or correct or right, or left of the issue or right of the issue. We want to be able to say, you know what, let's bring it out. Let's hear both sides. Let's see how it settles down. And the more that the public knows, we think the better it is for everybody. The more well-informed they are. I used to work with a guy who owned a chain of clothing stores, Cy Sims.
I remember that.
An educated consumer.
Showing how old we both are.
Yeah, an educated consumer is our best customer, and I think that's the case here. So we don't have misunderstandings with people. There's a lot of things that are being done that are good things and so forth. So in here locally,
I pick up I answer every call from any concerned citizen, and I'll return the call within 24 hours, and anybody within my organization will too. We're not, and any projects we're involved with. I mean, people don't realize we did the Golub building. We own the Golub building. Everybody thinks it's Golub. I mean, but Neil Golub committing to keeping his people downtown. MVP, David Oliker was the president at the time, committing to put his people downtown. He had some really passionate people about this community. It's not all the Gillespie group. It's not all the city. It's everybody working together.
and we want to say when the tide rises that it does float all the boats.
It has to, because think about take a look at those pictures at some point in time again, because you can see what things used to look like. We had closed dollar stores. When we did MVP back in the early 2000s, State Street was just ripped up. Canal Square was empty. Remember you remember, Joe, the Canal Square? Then they put water in it. Then they emptied the water. It was just there was nothing going on. The Woolworth was closed. The Kresge's was closed. The Lerner Store was closed. Center City, people used to take baths in the fountain out in front and do other things. But so it was kind of an embarrassment. I mean, Union College used to route people through Route 7 because they didn't want to come down. All of a sudden, I had dinner last year with a parent from Connecticut that was Union College. They go, I didn't realize this is a great college town. Well, guess what? These people were going to Albany or going to Saratoga and spending their money. Okay? Sales tax is coming in. Bed tax is coming in. We got 3 hotels popping up.
I'm glad you mentioned the sales tax thing. They entered into a sales tax revenue distribution agreement between the city and the county. I understand it was an 8-year agreement. And it was pretty much flat, at least from the articles in the newspaper. Any major increases in sales tax revenue regarding these projects and so on, it's not going to substantially increase the amount that goes to the city. And
I don't know that for a fact, but so I'm not. In all honesty, I'd rather. I mean, my job.
And that's another one of those complicated things that people.
Well, because I'm sure
people would like to figure out, you know.
And I'm sure sitting down, you could figure it out. I could figure it out if I read the thing. But the good news is, you got people working together. This used to be the Wild West when I first started here started develop. We developed in Austin, New York City, Saratoga, Albany, Green Island. We avoided Schenectady because city wasn't getting along with the county. I mean, forget that back on everybody. This is all public information. The county legislature didn't agree with the city. Everybody was jealous. You had 30 economic development agencies. You didn't. It was crazy back then.
So if there was a plan afoot, and we want to, by the way, always want to leave a show in a positive vein. So one quick question: if there was a plan afoot to stabilize the tax base, to stabilize the property values, as we say, went down 20%, and right now we're at an equalization rate of 1.21% for the city. if there was a plan afoot to do that, who has that plan? What is that plan? How would the people find out about how the plan to stabilize the taxes and the property values are long-term, long-range, longer range?
It'd be sitting down with the mayor and his team. It'd be sitting down with Metroplex. I mean, Metroplex actually has done a nice job in terms of orchestrating a plan to systematically create value. If you really looked at it, you're going lower State Street, lower State Street, Erie Boulevard, Union Street, going up to Eastern, and along those lines, if you can, I mean, the project at Mohawk Harbor is one that is going to create and I heard you indicated there was an article in the paper that says there's no written agreement on the property taxes or the casino taxes. Well, first of all, you can't have a written agreement because there's no casino license yet. The state hasn't come out with regulations, but the casino owner has committed to pay full property taxes and sales taxes and bed taxes. So they've committed to the New York State Gaming Commission, and it's part of their RFA. Right now, you don't have an agreement. If somebody's paying full taxes, there's no agreement to pay full taxes because you pay them. You don't have to. You don't need that. So it's asking something that's not necessary.
So do you think that Metroplex, for example, has a plan on stabilizing the taxes and property values, like a long-range plan? Or
yes.
the city? I mean, who would
it's collaborative.
Where would somebody go to find
I'm
this
not
out?
sure if you one piece of paper. I mean, plans are not, most times, I'll give you, I alluded to earlier, the Hunter plan, which somebody paid $500,000, Metroplex actually paid $500,000 for back in the old days. It's not worth the paper it's written on. What it comes
that
down,
was expensive paper.
it sure was.
$500,000, and no, it didn't use it.
I read it. It'd be an interesting, it's irrelevant because it's looking at something that's
but it would be,
historical.
yeah,
interesting on what they suggested versus reality. But the key is, if you can continue to get people to move here, businesses, because you first need the businesses, then you get into the residential, then you get into the retail. It's an evolution. Take a look at it. No matter what, this casino thing, you had a piece of property that sat there dormant. I mean, GE occupied it a little bit after Elko closed in 1969, but it was generating nothing. When we bought it, they didn't pay 1 cent of property taxes. They were accrued. Nobody was paying. The ATF owned some of the liens, the city. Nobody was doing anything. It was the wild, wild west out there. So we took it over, and the casino alone, the property tax, forget the property taxes, the gaming revenue, by statute, based on the projections, and it could be higher or lower depending on how many people gamble, is going to be $8.4 million a year, half to the county and half to the city. And both the county and the city have pledged to use that to reduce taxes. Okay, now think about that. That's probably, and I can guess, but I'm guessing it'd be a 15% reduction in the city taxes. Now, if Larry Spring is successful, which I hope he is in getting additional school aid, so let's say he got half of what the formula, the incremental of what we're not getting, $30 million. Well, that's another 10. So all of a sudden, those add up to 25% tax reductions. Guess what?
Well, this agreement on the revenue from the casino is an agreement between the city, the county, and the
No.
developer, or
No, it's by statute. There's X amount of a certain percentage that gets paid to the host community.
Okay.
So, based on what the casino people are projecting their revenue is, it comes out to $4.2 million each to the city and to the county. Both the county legislature and the city council pledged to use that revenue stream to reduce property
and that's
taxes.
a state statute.
The revenue stream is a state statute.
Okay.
The application of funds is whatever.
Well, that's good because no one had actually cleared that up before.
Yeah,
We
that's
weren't sure
a
where-
revenue stream. And then you've got property taxes that are going to be a significant number that's going to be paid to both the city and county and then school district on the casino and then on the rest of the development. So it's all this thing works. And then you've got the workers, 1,100 workers that are going to work at the casino. Well, guess what? They're going to have to live someplace too. They're going to have to spend money someplace. They're going to stop at a restaurant. They're going to stop at a grocery store. They're going to stop at a drugstore. They're going to go to the movies. They're going to go to Proctor's. So it's an interesting one. Now, I mean, it's when sometimes it's the forest from the trees. It's amazing that I'll run into somebody from this unit that hasn't been to downtown Schenectady in 10 years. They think they're going to get shot. I mean, the crime in downtown is nothing. But if we can, I mean, when the point I was making earlier, we brought people in from all over, like bankers and financiers, and they were saying, wow, you got something to be proud of. How come we never heard of it? And you know what? That's not a bad thing. When we brought in Rush Street Gaming, guess what? We had to sell them on Schenectady. They had their choice of, I mean, these guys are pros. They've got, they're one of the better casino operators, but they had their choice of, where back then, Tobin Meatpacking Building, E23, House Cavern, East Greenbush, Rensselaer. They could have picked any one. We ended up recruiting them. We brought them in. They met with county legislature. They met with city council people. We had to tell them this is what, because we had a blank piece of paper. We were developing the north side of Mohawk Harbor, but the south side we actually tried to get a movie production studio that wouldn't have paid any taxes.
I remember that in the paper too.
And they wouldn't have been able to pay taxes because those things don't make any money. And we got this, and holy cow, this is terrific. So if you can combine what they're doing with what Proctor's is doing. Proctor's brings, I'm on the board of Proctor's, so I'll disclose that, but Proctor's brings in 650,000 people a year to our city. If the casino projections are anywhere near right, they bring over 2.5 million into the city. That's 3.1 million people into our community. Guess what? They're going to spend some money.
But we have a discussion on our board because we have people who are for the casino project and people, quite frankly, who are opposed to it for one reason or the other, all on the same board, speaking at the same time. And where we're coming from as an organization, and the show Between the Lines, and we'll leave you with this kind of thought, is that in between whether you're for it or against it is a lot of material. There's a lot of area. Is it a good project? Is it a good contract? Is it a good deal? Is it in the best interest of, you know, it might be in the best interest of some people and not all, and so forth. And there's a big gray area between whether you're for it or against it. And I, for one, 100%, I'll bring the information out, because if it's a good project, it's going to be an even better project when the people are with you on it. And when they're looking at it and they're looking at all the information. And hopefully that doesn't mean that you can't ask any questions, as if you say, for example, I have a question about a certain part of a project, any project. Doesn't mean I'm against economic development, doesn't mean I'm even against that project. But maybe there's an issue there that ought to be brought out or brought to light, and it shouldn't be swept under the rug because either you're for it or against it, kind of thing. That's more of a political opinion.
The for or against of a casino was decided at the polls when they put the referendum out in November of 2013. Okay, the population in New York State voted for authorizing 4 casinos. So the time you're against the casino was done. They lost a vote. It's whether you're for or against Andrew Cuomo. He's the governor, and you're supportive of it. He's our governor. Yeah. Same thing with the president. So the time to be now. So now they authorized it. So the question is, okay, every community wanted it pretty much. I mean, with the exception of maybe Saratoga that didn't want to bifurcate their downtown.
Yeah. But Green Island was, I think, also against
East Greenbush. No, the residents in East Greenbush were, and it didn't belong to a suburb because it was meant to create economic benefit for needy communities. Well, guess what? East Greenbush wasn't a needy community. Rensselaer was. Schenectady's a bigger one. Rensselaer had what, 11,000 people or whatever. We got 65,000. So the impact, we were the largest applicant out of 17 applications or 16 applications for a casino license. By far. Second was Newburgh with 28,000 people. So we were more than twice the population base, and therefore could use the aid. We had a school district that had a significant poverty issue. So along those lines, it made sense. The other side of it is, guess what? I drove across Freeman's Bridge Road from 1975 on. Did you look at those buildings? I showed you those pictures.
Yeah,
okay, that's one of our entrances from the north, whether it's from Clifton Park, from Saratoga, from Glenville. And that's an embarrassment that we have. And we're a victim of our history. We, in the Northeast particularly, we either put railroads, factories, or highways on our rivers. So all of a sudden now we got a riverfront.
Now that was, for those people that are interested in looking at it further, the MohawkHarbor.com. And I think you have a lot of these images up there, do you?
Well, that's focused more on our project on Mohawk Harbor. Brooke, I'll find out where we can have those on the before and after picture, and maybe we can put those on the Gillespie Group website, which is a lot easier.
Yes,
Gillespie.com.
Gillespie.com. Okay.
So.
And in the last few seconds that we have in our program here, we'd like you to leave us with a positive note. How's that?
Well, the positive note is that if you're a resident of Schenectady or resident of Capital District, and we develop all over the country, there should be a sense of pride, because there is. There's a lot of things. When you bring people in here, you do have something to be proud of. We've got to address the neighborhoods. We will address the neighborhoods. But the fact is that we bottomed out. I mean, how many people have closed dollar stores? Now we've got walk through Schenectady at night, see what's a Broadway show on Proctor's, go to one of the restaurants. I mean, there's so many places to go. We should stick out our chest and be proud, because even though it's a very finite, GE brings people in. They're proud of it. We've rekindled our relationship with GE. How many times have we had Jeff Immelt here? That's pretty awesome. For him to focus back on GE and bringing jobs back to Schenectady and the capital region, it's probably one of the best things, but we're not a one-horse town anymore. And let me tell you, the best is yet to come in my mind.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for coming.
My pleasure. It was fun.
And I hope you come back again sometime and we can talk some more. Once again, this is Between the Lines, and this is on SAC.TV, live on the internet Fridays at 11:30, and then it's put out for rebroadcast on OSM and Channel 18 also in Albany. And we'll put it up on the website afterward permanently so people can link to it if they want to go get a little more reference to that. So thank you very much.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, look at drop.